The crowd gathered before sunrise, but the silence felt heavier than fear, not because they pitied the man standing at the center of the square, but because they knew what was about to happen. Even in an empire raised on conquest, bloodshed, and spectacle, this punishment was different. Roman soldiers had marched through fields littered with bodies. Executioners had ended lives without hesitation for years. Yet when this sentence was announced, even they went pale. Some quietly asked to be replaced. Others stood frozen, hoping the order would somehow be withdrawn, because this was the one punishment that forced even Rome's hardest men to confront something worse than death. Roman authors struggled to write about it. Later generations tried to erase it entirely, and those commanded to carry it out sometimes refused, fully aware that once it began, there was no turning back. This is a story rarely told, a truth buried beneath centuries of silence, one of those dark chapters that hidden secret tales exists to uncover. Rome did not conquer the world through mercy. It conquered through discipline, hierarchy, and fear carefully disguised as law. To outsiders, Roman justice looked impressive, organized, almost modern. Crimes were categorized, punishments were standardized, procedures were followed. Nothing was left to chance. Steal from the wrong man, and your hand could be removed. Rebel against Rome, and your body would be nailed to wood along the road as a warning. Desert the army, and death would be swift, public, and unforgiving. Romans believed chaos was the greatest enemy of civilization. Anything that threatened order had to be crushed completely before it spread. But among all crimes, there was one Rome considered beyond forgiveness. Not treason, not rebellion, not mass murder. This crime struck at the very foundation of Roman identity. To understand why, we must step inside a Roman home. In Rome, the state did not begin in the Senate. It began at the dinner table. At the center of every household stood one man, the pater familias. Under Roman law, this man held absolute authority over his family. This power was called patria potestas, the power of the father. It allowed him to control property, arrange marriages, approve or deny careers, sell family members into slavery, decide punishments. His authority extended over his wife, his slaves, his children, and even his adult sons. In early Roman history, this power went even further. A father should legally kill his own child, not in secret, not in shame, but openly, under law. To modern ears, this sounds monstrous. To Romans, it was logical. The father represented order, discipline, stability. Without him, the family collapsed. Without strong families, Rome collapsed. So the father was not just a parent, he was judge, he was law, he was Rome in miniature. To challenge him was to challenge civilization itself. When a child murdered their parent, Rome did not see it as simple homicide. It saw something far worse, a crime against nature, a crime against the gods, a crime against the cosmic order. This act had a name, parricide, and for parricide, Rome reserved a punishment unlike any other. When a Roman court declared someone guilty of killing their own parent, the sentence was not announced with drama. There were no cheers, no speeches, no spectacle. The crowd already knew. The condemned would face Poena Culei, the punishment of the sack. Poena Culei was not meant to correct behavior. It was meant to erase existence. The goal was not simply to kill the criminal, but to strip them of everything that defined a Roman life: air, land, burial, memory. Before the execution even began, the condemned was symbolically removed from humanity. They were beaten publicly, not out of rage, but ritual. Their head was covered, not to protect dignity, but to sever connection with the living world. They were no longer a person. They were a thing to be disposed of. Then came the sack, a massive bag made of thick leather or heavy canvas, stiff, airless, suffocating. But the sack was not empty. Roman law demanded that living animals be placed inside the sack, not randomly. Each animal carried meaning. A dog, symbolizing betrayal and broken loyalty. A rooster, representing disorder and the collapse of natural rhythms. A monkey, mocking humanity, something almost human, but wrong. And a snake, ancient symbol of deceit, poison, and death. Together, these creatures represented what Rome believed the criminal had become. The animals were shoved inside alive. They clawed, screamed, bit at the darkness. Then the condemned was forced in with them. This was the moment executioners dreaded, because once the sack was sealed, there was no mercy. Roman executioners were not weak men. They had overseen crucifixions. They had thrown prisoners to beasts. They had watched thousands die without flinching. But Poena Culei was different. It required proximity. Inside the sack, panic exploded. The animals lashed out blindly, claws tore skin, teeth found flesh. Bodies slammed against each other in total darkness. Air vanished within minutes. The condemned suffocated slowly while being bitten, scratched, crushed. And the executioners heard everything. Muffled screams, frantic movement, the dull thud as strength faded. Some accounts describe executioners stepping back, shaking. Others turned away, unable to watch. This was not distant. This was intimate, and it left scars. Once sealed, the sack was lifted. Not carried to land, to water, a river, a harbor, the open sea. Roman soil was sacred. The condemned was considered unworthy of touching it. The sack was thrown into the water. If the criminal survived the animals and suffocation, they drowned. No grave, no marker, no name. Romans believed this denied the soul peace. No afterlife, no remembrance, only endless wandering. Poena Culei was almost never used. That was intentional. Its rarity made it legendary. Parents whispered about it to children. Judges referenced it carefully. Writers avoided details. It became a shadow hanging over Roman society. Even emperors feared association with parricide. To be accused was to be socially dead before execution ever came. Behind the law were real people, sons driven by desperation, daughters trapped in violent homes, families destroyed by inheritance disputes. Rome did not care why the crime happened, only that it had happened. There were false accusations, forced confessions, political enemies erased by rumor. Once sentenced, there was no appeal. The sack waited. As centuries passed, Rome changed. Christianity spread. New ideas entered law, forgiveness, redemption, the sanctity of the soul. Poena Culei became embarrassing, pagan, too brutal. Some emperors quietly abandoned it. Others replaced it with beheading. Eventually, it faded, not because Rome became kinder, but because Rome wanted to forget. Historians softened descriptions. Art avoided it. Textbooks ignored it. But fragments survived. Enough for hidden secret tales to piece the truth back together. Rome called itself civilized, advanced, orderly. Yet when threatened, it responded with annihilation. Poena Culei was not justice, it was a message. That loyalty mattered more than life. That order mattered more than mercy. That power mattered more than humanity. And perhaps the most disturbing truth of all, the executioners hated it, but they did it anyway, because in Rome, obedience meant survival, and silence meant safety. So the next time we admire Roman roads, laws, and monuments, remember the sack sinking beneath the water, the screams history tried to drown, and ask yourself how many brutal truths still remain hidden, waiting to be uncovered.